So this is something new that I wanted to try out, since every time I post on Reddit I get banned. I decided I could respond to these prompts this way and maybe help you guys out with a way that you may be feeling in the process. So let's analyze this awfulness and find out the truth. It reads, my stepsister and I, both 15, used to be close. We became stepsisters at 6, and even though I never called her just my sister, I always thought of her as one of my best friends and a part of the family. The only source of conflict we ever had was my dad's family. They never took my stepsister on as their family, and when I'd go to visit them, she'd get upset about it. She always felt that it wasn't fair. My dad died and his family stayed in my life and loved me and made sure I had more people to love me. But her mom left her, and so did her mom's family. I know that it made her jealous, and I know we fought about it before. She'd beg me to let her come along, but I always felt a little uncomfortable with that, so I never asked. Before we continue on to the story, I do want to comment on the foundation here a little bit. Just to clarify, I'm going to refer to OP's stepsister as just her sister. It's shorter and signifies the relationship that the stepsister seemingly wanted to have with OP that OP admits to not necessarily giving her. Since it was important to bring up for OP, I believe that it may have some significance throughout the story. Got it? Good. Growing up in the environment that OP's sister was in couldn't have been easy for her. She grew up from a young age with OP practically sisters, but never completely considered one. Her mother and her mom's side of the family left her for what seems like no reason at all, leaving her feeling alienated in her own home. She lost half of her family, not just her mother, but most, if not all, of the people with relation to said mother as well. Whatever the main problem becomes in the future, this background information reveals many reasons on why the sister may do whatever she does. All she wanted was a family, but she wasn't accepted as a part of one, not one that feels full anyway. Instead, she was considered a best friend and family in that regard by someone that she may have considered as her sister, even if they aren't bound by blood. I'm not justifying her actions, whatever they may be, but with how I interpret her background now clarified, it may lead to understanding them at the very least. Back to the story. 2 months ago, my stepsister wanted us to go to this convention an hour from where we live. She never said anything and bought the tickets online without asking her dad or me. That same weekend, I had plans to visit my great-grandma for her birthday and was spending the night with her and my grandparents. When she did mention the convention, it was like 3 days before, and I refused to cancel seeing my family to go with her. She told me she really wanted us to go, and I could see my family at any time. I told her my great-grandma is older and I might not get to see her anytime because she's in and out of the hospital a lot. Now at this point, I can't imagine that her sister did this maliciously at all. There's a big chance that she just wanted to surprise OP with the tickets to the convention, or was scared that OP would say no, or even just waited to buy the tickets since she has no relation to OP's late father's side of the family, and she wouldn't feasibly know about the great-grandmother's birthday, especially since OP doesn't seem like she wants to discuss them with her sister to begin with. Another issue arising due to the lack of communication and alienation that the OP sister is experiencing. Plus, she doesn't decide what time the convention occurs, so it falling on the birthday had to purely have been a coincidence as well. Now we're back. That weekend while I was gone, my stepsister found the DVD my dad made for me before he died, which was his last goodbye to me. It was my comfort item. I had it in my room, in my desk, because I wanted it to be safe. My stepsister broke the disc and tossed it in the trash in the mall before I got back. I went to watch it that night and it was gone. I told my mom and I was pretty hysterical, and that's when she and my stepdad figured out what happened, and I realized after. Okay, before we get into OP's reaction, let's talk about the situation at hand. The OP's father died, but she kept a relationship with his family, a relationship specific to her and not extended towards her sister. For an unknown amount of time, the sister has had to be reminded that OP has this relationship, and she will never have a similar relationship with either that family, nor her mother or her family, so even if it's not necessarily right, if jealousy forms, then there are logical reasons for it. Those emotions build up over time, and even if spending time with OP at this convention meant the absolute world to her, or if it was which, just as important as a raindrop in an ocean, it still ended up being the straw that broke the camel's back, since this situation yet again relates to OP's late father by involving his family, the same ones that I want to reiterate don't accept the sister. She did something that severed the only physical connection OP had to her father. She destroyed the disc that OP's father gave OP before he passed, the last goodbye to her. The situation that caused this was entirely avoidable if instead of outcasting the sister, OP's late father's side of the family attempted to accept her even if slightly. They have no obligation to, but to a 6-year-old girl, getting locked off from a section of what appears to be her family had to have been confusing for her, especially whenever her mother and those relatives left her life as well. It's possible she blamed herself for that outcome, saw it as some sort of punishment, or that maybe it was because of something wrong with her. I can make assumptions all day, but the point is, it obviously left an effect on her throughout the years, which was also hammered home by the line, she'd beg me to let her come along, but I always felt a little uncomfortable with that, so I never asked, showing that it was important enough to the sister that on numerous occasions she begged for that connection, and yet OP never once even asked if it could be a possibility, so we'll never know how her late father's family truly would have felt regarding the situation. OP doesn't owe that to her sister, that's a fact, but the damage it may have caused, whether intentional or not, is undeniable. I told my stepsister I hated her, I would never let her be my family again, and we would never be friends again. She started crying and apologizing, and I told her that it didn't matter because she's dead to me. The sister is obviously at fault here, don't get me wrong, but after those feelings of jealous alienation, losing the person that seems to matter to her most makes me worried for her well-being. She deserves punishment, that's a fact. She doesn't deserve forgiveness for the sake of it, also a fact. So I can't blame OP here. OP reacted out of hurt and anger, same with her sister, and both reactions can be justified in some regard. OP reacted in an emotional-filled haste due to the betrayal from her sister and what seemed like the suddenness of it, but it wasn't sudden. It was built up for many years by the treatment of the sister. Was she being intentionally hurt? No, of course not, but it not being intentional doesn't downplay her pain. In fact, it may have made it even worse, since her feelings weren't even considered as an afterthought. Again, I'm not blaming OP here. She had the right to the decisions that she made, but she does share some responsibility for the outcome of those decisions. Continuing, my mom took me for ice cream to try and calm me down and cheer me up, and my stepsister was grounded when I got back. Punishment was given, but since we don't know the extent of what grounding means in this situation, I can't comment on whether the amount was fair or even just that OP didn't see it as enough, not enough to counter the pain inflicted onto her, and it's up to her to decide whether she feels like forgiving her sister, no one else, which is why things have not blown over. I refuse to forgive her. I ignore her and make sure she's not allowed to touch me. I leave the room if she comes in. I ignored her at school too. She was getting more and more upset. My mom and stepdad asked me to work on forgiving her, and I said never. They now want us to go to therapy together, and I said no. I told them I won't go willingly, and even if they make me, I won't take part in therapy. I said they can waste money if they want, but I am not going to let her fix this. I told them I wish she was never in my life, that I really hate her, and I hope she ends up miserable and never getting over the guilt of what she did, because I'll never forget. My mom and stepdad got mad at me over refusing and said I needed to learn to forgive. Am I the butthole? No. You're not the butthole, OP, but your sister, I wouldn't necessarily classify her as one either. Not entirely. In my opinion, a butthole would be someone that does something mean, hateful, or malicious outside of what I could deem as logical reasoning. The way I see it, she's just a hurt girl, lashing out in the way that would make her pain understandable the most, by inflicting it onto you. It doesn't make it right, but she seems like someone who didn't think it through before doing it. Not rationally, me anyway. That being said, she screwed up beyond belief. You owe her no forgiveness, you have no responsibility to apologize for your treatment of her in response, and anyone that says otherwise doesn't really have the right to. Nobody can understand the pain she inflicted to the degree in which you feel it, so they have no right to assume that they can. And in terms of them forcing you to go to therapy, if you don't want to make a change, then no change will be made. No amount of forced therapy will change that. Again, it's entirely your choice, and you have every right to it. I don't think you should hate her forever. You're both still kids, and her decision wasn't one made in maturity. It's not my decision though, and if you are to forgive her, it has to be on your own time, whenever you are ready. And just because you forgive someone doesn't equate to you needing to forget. This mistake was a costly one. Allow it to cost her. Just want it to be known that I am on the side of forgiveness eventually, one day. Even if that just means that you yourself let that anger go. You don't have to let her back in, just don't hold on to that hatred forever. Especially if it means you're still thinking of her, even if she never gives you another thought down the line. Don't let it shackle you down just because you wanted to shackle her. But what do I know, right? I'm just some random YouTuber making content off of your situation. I'm not qualified to give advice, and yet I do it anyway, unsolicited of course. Have a great day, thank you.